What is the worst case of helicopter parenting you have seen? Had a mother call me to find out why her son didn't get the job. Hes 40. And an attorney. I had a mother turn up at my workplace accusing me of racism, that I didn't hire her daughter. We are a very multicultural practice and myself and 2 other people are white English, 6 Indian staff, 2 Greek, 2 Nigerian, 3 Chinese and 3 Pakistani. I took her to our photo wall of staff and asked her why she thinks I was racist, and she said that her daughter looked more Indian than the other staff. Her daughter, who was more than qualified, didn't get the job for a couple of reasons. 1. She refused to put her phone away during the interview in case her mother phoned. 2. Her mother phoned more than 10 times. She answered every call. 3. She asked if she could keep her mum on the phone to listen into the interview in case she needed help to answer my questions. How could she run a practice if she needed to have her mum help her at the interview? Mine. Keeping it short, because I'm typing this at work, it'll go into detail with an edit when I get home. I was 20 years old and still not allowed out of the house without my mom, and I had to hold hands crossing the street. I never had a job, never learned to cook, all because I was, in her words, going to live with her forever. I got a boyfriend, even though I'd never been allowed to visit any owned house. Ever. She asked to see his SS and birth certificate to prove he was the age he said he was. I told her I wanted to move out and she freaked. Called police and told them I was mentally unstable. Told them I wasn't ready for the outside world. The police believed her, and it took me a full year to actually escape. I even had relatives parked outside at night to make sure I didn't leave. I'm now 23 and slowly adjusting to the world, but it's hard. I can cook, but driving is hard. I have no social skills. I don't know how to talk to people. And she still asks me to come home every day via text. My sister was friends with this girl in middle school whose mom would put her tampons in for her because she was worried she wouldn't do it right. Tampons, not pads. Not that pads would have been normal either. Edit. For everyone concerned, it was abuse. My sister was at a sleepover, and before they went to bed the girl told her mom she needed her tampon changed. So the whole thing was just really bizarre all around. I had a 16-year-old co-worker whose mother sat in on the interview and tried to answer all the questions for him. He quit a couple of months later, or should I say, his mother called the store to quit for him. One lady we had over was shocked that my at the time 9-year-old younger brother could dress himself and brush his teeth, claiming that he was so mature and that her daughter age 9 couldn't do anything like that. My mom immediately realized it was helicopter parenting and had a long talk with her. I hope that little girl has learned how to dress herself and do lots of other basics now. Edit. Holy moly, this got a lot of attention. Thanks. Do these parents have no memories of their own childhood? I remember dressing myself when I was 5. I specifically remember this because my mom used to organize getting dressed races in the morning so that my sister and I wouldn't dawdle, and my sister was only 2, so my mom would help her a little, and it beach that it wasn't fair. She was 2. It was fair. My sister is a freshman in college, and her roommate has an absolute psycho helicopter mom. They're both on the cross-country team and very good students. My sister said the roommate never drinks or goes out, but her mom tracks her through phone GPS and will text her constantly asking why she's at such and such place. My sister said one time they were at Walmart getting groceries and her mom called her to ask why she was at Walmart at 9 PM. Another time, they drove to my other sister's, she lives in the same town, apartment to pick something up, and the girl's mom called and starts yelling and asking why she's been sitting in a parking lot for 20 minutes. My sister said she'll constantly have to send pictures of them at the library to her to prove they're actually studying. I just don't get that kind of smothering of your kid. I mean, if you want to check up on what they're doing then fine. Especially if you're paying the bills, but dang, the poor girl can't even have a normal college experience and is constantly worried about upsetting her mom. It just all seems so unhealthy to me. I mean, I had friends' parents who did that in high school, but once they're adults in college, you really have to cut the cord. My wife, being a teacher, had to deal with this on a regular basis. Usually, she would have that parent do menial tasks so they would not bother the class. One parent became so overbearing, demanding to see lesson plans, making my wife take class time to re-explain subjects. My wife deliberately left a quiz out. This parent took the quiz and slipped her kid the answers. Knowing the kid was not a good student, my wife got the parent to fess up to taking the test and passing the answers. This went to the principal and he banned her from the class. The parent made multiple complaints, even going to a district meeting. The school board held up the ban. As a kid, my sister had a friend and went over to her house quite a bit to hang out with her. The friend lived in a very nice, quiet neighborhood. After a day of hanging with her friend at her house, my sister told me that her friend's parents had placed cameras in her room. The camera was also equipped with a microphone to not only hear what was going on in her room, but also to speak to the child. My sister told stories after coming home about the mom calling into the room to sometimes tell them to stop doing an activity or to be a little more quiet. This woman was watching their every move and listening to their every conversation. I feel bad for the girl, honestly. To me that's a huge invasion of privacy, as well as it is extremely creepy in general. If it were me, I'd throw every camera installed in the room straight out the window or at the mom. Whichever. 18-year-old dude gets fired from job as lot attendant for doing something stupid with a car. Peeling out or speeding. Mom comes in with him later and complains to manager about him being fired. Says her son would never do that. Manager and salesman basically laugh them out of building. I worked at a small community library. A kid lived in the building across the parking lot from the library. He would leave his building, walk the 150 feet to the front door of the library, come to the desk and use the courtesy phone to call and report to his mom that he got to the library safely. I remember the day that he didn't do this. She came flying into the library like 5 minutes later, freaking out that her son had been kidnapped and we needed to find him. Back when I taught a freshman course during graduate school, I had a parent email me on behalf of her daughter. The young woman had missed half of the class, failed 2 major assignments, and had her mommy emailing me trying to allow her to pass. When I told her about FERPA, she tried to get me in trouble with the department chair. Edit. This young lady made it into my comments before. She was the only student to try the "I'll do anything to pass" line. I knew a mother who kept her 5-year-old daughter in diapers when they went out of the house because she didn't want her using public restrooms, because the girl sitting in her own excrement was much better for her health, apparently. I used to teach middle school. The teacher next to me had given a 6th grade girl a C on a paper because it didn't meet the proper criteria. Mom was livid and came into the school furious about the grade. After the teacher and mom went back and forth about the grade, the mom blurts, "I have a college degree and I took writing courses for 4 years, and I wrote this paper. Are you telling me I can't get an A on a 6th grade assignment?" The teacher stuck to her guns, but never answered the question. I'm in private elementary education, so this question is right up my alley. I had a student one year who was the middle child of 3 and the mother was the textbook definition of a helicopter. But it was more than that. She also had a bad case of wanting to be your 10-year-old's best friend instead of their parent. Here is a short list of things she did. She would come attend school events like plays, etc., and try to sit next to her child on the floor, crisscross applesauce and all. She would deliver her child lunch every single day. Not send in a packed lunch, mind you. She would deliver something like fast food, especially Chick-fil-A, and she always had enough for herself as well. So she basically tried to come eat lunch with her daughter every day. One day I confronted the student about this and made up a bogus rule that her mom had to bring me lunch as well. And sure enough, the next day I got a sub from Subway. She would let the girl stay home for any and all reasons. The girl was literally absent 25 days a year before I had her, although I tried my best to crush that bad habit and got her down to 14 days absent when I had her. Some of the notes/doctor's excuses a mom sent in were really ridiculous. When she was at the school for her younger child, for example, when she came by for kindergarten parties or whatever, she would sneak out and walk the halls and peek through the classroom windows of her other 2 kids to check on them. I would joke with our principal that this woman might secretly be an employee of our security company trying to find flaws in our security procedures. We had to come up with all sorts of new rules and procedures for all the parents to follow just to stop this one woman. The girl was not a very good student, and I'm pretty sure more than half of the homework handed in to me was completed by the mother. My final interaction with her was when I invited her and her husband in for a conference because I gave the girl a 0 for missing an assignment with an unexcused absence, and I basically forced the mother to admit that she took the girl shopping that day instead of bringing her to school. The dad was completely unaware this was happening and went off on her. It didn't solve the problem permanently as she continued to helicopter the following year before leaving the school, but it toned it down while I heard her at least. The sad thing is you encounter parents like this all the time. They don't realize the long-term harm they are causing their children or the bad habits they are helping them to develop. TL. Doctor don't helicopter. A 13-year-old kid down the street. His mom, dad, and grandma were always with him. Always. He had never been away from them, even when they have a nanny to watch him. One of them was there. The kid was never on his own for anything, and the creepiest thing I saw them do, we had them to a party in the park, and when the 13-year-old asked for a hot dog, the mom freaked out, not because it was a hot dog. Some parents have dietary restrictions because I served them whole. She took the hot dog from his hand and cut it for him in little baby bits like I would do for my 1-year-old at the time, then handed it back to him like she saved his life. Let me get this straight, he was a normal teen with no mental impediments. The dad took him to the bathroom with a gallon of sanitizer and baby wipes and make sure the boy washed his hands. These people hold regular jobs. One is a lawyer, one admin at our local hospital, and the Grams was an exec with the state attorney. They were from the Bay Area, which we have a lot of transplants from, but they seem to have taken it to the next level, helicoptering weirdness. I was going to move into a dorm with a friend, but her mother contacted administration and insisted that she live in the same residence as the dorm minder to make sure she was doing her homework and staying away from alcohol. We were 20. The legal drinking age here is 8. Her mother would also show up after seminars to walk her home 10 minutes away and would contact professors to negotiate extensions and protest bad grades. I found out afterwards that she had a pretty serious history of mental illness, so there were legitimate reasons to be concerned for her safety. Still, I couldn't help but think a lot of her problems resulted from being told over and over again that she couldn't be trusted to stand on her own 2 feet. My aunt went to my cousin's first week of university classes. My best friend's mother and father moved to the town where his college is located his freshman year. Some dad didn't want to walk his kid to the bus stop, so he bought a drone so that the drone could watch him walk to the bus stop. That's real helicopter parenting. A few years ago we were hiring for an entry-level help desk position. A nice kid came in with his mom. I very politely offered her something to drink and a place she could sit. She was not invited to the interview itself. This lady started to get very aggressive about being in the room, and the poor kid was getting embarrassed. My final answer was that he was no longer being considered for the position, and she lost it. Our receptionist called the police, and they were there within a minute. She cooled down a little when the police arrived, almost as if she had been through this before. They nicely escorted her off the property, and luckily we never heard from her again. I went to boarding school for high school, and when I was a senior there was a freshman whose mother would drive 3 hours every weekend to be with her. On said weekends her mother wouldn't take her out. She would hang out with her friends with her, to the point where I think the mother thought she was friends with her daughter's friends. Field trips, she would go. Band tours, she would make sure she was at every place they performed. The mother would try and assign extra homework for her to do on top of her schoolwork, which went on until a dean found out and yelled at the mom. I went to alumni this year, BFF on the alumni board, not just a loser, and I stayed at an old staff member's house, and that happened to be where the class that graduated that year was having a gathering. Lo and behold, the girl was there, and so was her mother. A guy I know is 23. He has 2 moms. Adopted. I'm not sure which mom is worse. One of them runs all his social media accounts. We would get messages from him that just sounded weird. When asked, he would have no idea what he said. He has a cell phone that can only call his parents and 911. Not allowed to drive. Anytime he goes somewhere new, his mom tags along for a few hours to check things out. Has only allowed to eat at certain restaurants. Has to check in with his moms constantly. He doesn't see any issue with this. I almost think it's a form of abuse. He is not an independent thinker. He relies on everyone else to make decisions for him. Smart kid too. My mom. When my mom and brother came to visit me in the city I lived in at that time, and we went to a building that is a tourist attraction. She's already been there, so she stayed down in some coffee shop while me and my brother went in to go to the top. There was a really big line, and while we were waiting he was telling me of all the times she'd go crazy because I would miss to reply to her for one day or so. We were joking that considering how long the whole tour of the building was taking, she'd probably already be talking to cops. When we got out, there she was, talking to a cop. Because someone probably kidnapped two adults in a crowded building packed with security and tourists. Lol. That reminds me, when I went to a mirror maze attraction, and I got lost from my family. I was probably 19 or 22, and I guess my family finished like 20 minutes earlier than me. Mom thought someone kidnapped me, and she is about to go in, and the employee says, "You need to wear a glove, so you don't get fingerprints on the glass," and mom goes, "Fuck your glove, I need to find my daughter," or something along those lines to the employee. I love her, but she freaks out way too much about these kind of things. I have a friend whose parents makes them drive an hour back to their house from her university 4 times a week to keep an eye on her. But the worst part is, she's also working 3 jobs, the president at club, and is taking the hardest class of her major this quarter. There was a girl whose mom would not allow her to attend social events without the mom for fear of the child encountering a bad influence. I remember she was invited to a sleepover and the mom, at the last second, like literally at the front door of the house the sleepover was at, said she couldn't go because the parents of the other child had not been impressed when informed that it was mandatory that they accommodate a grown-ass woman as well as a group of 8-year-olds when no such provision had been discussed beforehand when sleeping. Back in the 90s, this popular girl in grade 5 or so would get dropped off by her mom to school and picked up. That's normal. But several times a week her mom would drive by really slow at recess and park on a gravel road about 200 meters away from the playground and just sit there and watch. I'm guessing her mom didn't have a job or something. It was super creepy. This girl would also get constant phone calls from her mom at the office. Because this was before cell phones, several times a week. I have no clue what her deal is. I work in a college. We get helicopter parents constantly. I think my favorite example was a mother who called every day, telling us how to do our jobs, and listing off Rolodexes of complaints for things, including how we don't treat the students like adults and coddle them. In the same breath she was asking me to divulge information regarding her son's healthcare and information with the college, and refused to let him speak to me himself, because he was only a kid and she would handle it. I was a soccer referee as a tween and teenager. At first I only worked the U6 and U8 games. Yes, they used refs for those brackets in my associated, though they didn't use Linespieple. One blustery November day, I was working a U8 game. The wind was so loud I couldn't hear well, and neither the patter of rain nor the murmur, if the crowd helped. One of the kids behind me tripped and fell. He cried, but in a whimpery sobbing way that didn't travel in that wind. None of the players saw, none of the coaches saw, and I didn't see. This kid's dad was furious and ran out on the field screaming. I heard him as he got within a couple yards and turned in time for him to shove me to the ground, standing over me screaming. I was 12. I complained to the league ref coordinator, but nothing ever came of it, that I know of. At least if he was a stealer, he'd get a 15-yard flag, and then wouldn't be allowed back the next week. One of my good friends has helicopter parents. She is 28 and has lived in 2 other states, but her parents need to know exactly what she is doing, who she is with, etc. They monitor her bank account. She must talk through any major purchases with them. Her parents need to approve of her friends, and if they don't approve she cannot tell them that she hangs out with them. She was in a relationship for 7 years with a guy that her parents didn't approve of. Like 6.5 years of the relationship was a secret from her parents. It's miserable hanging out with her. She refuses to tell them to back off because they might not financially support her anymore. My girlfriend's mother. My girlfriend is 22 in a few months. She keeps track of my GFS bank account and credit card purchases. She also keeps track of my GFS cell phone call logs and asks her why she's having long phone calls with this phone number, which is obviously mine. I guess it doesn't help that my girlfriend and I have been secretly dating for about a year and a half. I've worked at a few universities. My favorite call was a mom calling and bitching about not being able to see her 26-year-old graduate student's grades. I was a non-traditional, older student when I went to college. 24 in freshman year, not super old, but old enough. I wanted to do the whole thing. I got stuck in a dorm, forced into a triple. Okay, I'm trying out college. I'll move to an apartment the following year. Nope. A mom of one of the other students called the admissions office to complain, saying that I'd buy her kid beer I didn't drink at the time. I ended up getting to move out into an on-campus apartment because of her. The best part was, I was going to work when they were moving in, and she was all proud of the fact that she had me thrown out of the dorm. The kid was embarrassed. I was like, oh, thanks, I'm sorry but I have to go to work. She looked a little sheepish at that point. I'm 18. My parents make me have an app that tracks location and speed in vehicles and such. I'm also in college about 3 hours away from home. One night at around 8 PM I decided I was going to go get some pictures at the lake literally across the street from campus, less than a 2-minute walk. The second my foot hits the other side of the street I get a text from my mom asking me what I'm doing. Stuff like this happens all the time. Cool. So not weird at all to know that you were watching my location at that exact moment. Things like this are the reason I have really bad anxiety. So now I just spoof my location 24/7 because it's really unnecessary to ask me where I'm going or what I'm doing every time I leave my room. One time in high school band we were supposed to travel up north to play in the massive Thanksgiving Day parade. Naturally, we were going to stay a few nights in a hotel with 4 people per room. My mom had the bright idea to come with me and stay in the same room with me and 2 other 16 to 17-year-old boys. Thankfully my dad talked her out of it, but she still insisted that I text her every day of the trip. My brother was injured in a training accident in the Israeli army. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was a pretty messy injury that needed immediate care. For some reason the base commander tried to hide the injury and refused to send my brother to the hospital. Instead he sent him to the camp medic who took one look at my brother and said, "Here, have some morphine and holy god I'm going to call for help." My brother asked him to call my mom. My mom, a military police colonel at the time, commandeered a helicopter along with a squad of MPs. She then flew up into Lebanon, where my brother was based, landed in the middle of his base, ordered her way into the medical tent, while setting the MPs outside as guards, loaded my brother into the chopper and evacuated him out. To be fair, she's a great mom who usually lets us fail on our own, but you asked for helicopter parenting examples and it doesn't get more helicopter parent than actually commandeering a helicopter to go take care of your son.